Wow, there it is. This is where the game's being played. A couple months ago, the Lieutenant Governor came down to Carmel and gave us a precious hour of his time. This is when he was a candidate to be Secretary of Labor, so he was a little fully subscribed. And about a dozen children stayed after school. By the way, and Andre would tell you this is such a high-risk middle school, sometimes you have to remind parents to pick up their kids. And the school becomes the custodian until the parent gets there. But the Lieutenant Governor came, Anatoly, made him spin a bicycle tire and a few other things, but then he turned his attention to the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in that environment and asked them what their favorite topic was. Math and physics. Oh, by the way, physics is the first application of math, so they now started connecting why they're learning all those quadratic equations and formulas. So it all started making sense as to how the world works. We also are ever mindful, and if I had the mayor here today, or our county administrators, the Regional Business Alliance, or whomever, communities are going to survive, and I'm looking at Mark, they're the ones that got to have a step up on other communities. And I would say we only have to swim upstream into middle schools, and it's in our own backyard right now to make the biggest profound change in this state and in this community possible. When Governor Hickenlooper rolled out his economic blueprint, he said, I want this to be simple and elegant. And we want our foundation's application of physics to be simple and elegant. We're not, as Jim said, we're not reinventing any wheels. We're just plugging it in. By the way, this isn't optional for school districts. If they don't get it as an elective, they don't teach it on Saturdays, they can't take part of it, they gotta put this inside the system. And Carmel does it different than Corpus Christi, but they're both getting to the same endpoint. And at the end of the day, it can't be the staff transmitting. We've got to have the apostles out in the audience that make this happen on our behalf. So with this, and I'll tell you, if I ever had a need for trauma care in this community, as I get in the EMS ambulance, if we still have that service in a year, I'm going to say just find Dr. Berson, engineer, turned medical doctor, and he's got some profound observations. He's on the board of Corpus Christi. Andy, we're delighted to have him. Please.
Thanks, Dave. So I'm Andy Berson, and on the sheet it says I'm supposed to kind of tell my story. I don't know that that's such as important as my role as, again, one of the board members, or what we call ourselves a school advisory council at Corpus Christi Catholic School. But I think it does play a little bit into why we decided to adopt this at Corpus Christi. So as a background, things make sense. I learned early on that every day is a school day, and then earlier one of the presenters asked, well, what was this sentinel moment in your life that got you excited about the field that you chose? Well, I've chosen two, so I don't know if that really applies, but it plugs in with what See the Change is doing. See the Change is targeted the middle school as the time when kids' brains are to the point where they can start to incorporate some of the more advanced things that physics brings to bear, but is also an opportunity to get the kids excited. And when I think back, honestly, my high school and middle school science teachers weren't the most dynamic people on the planet, but in thinking back on it, just sitting there listening to other presenters, when I was in middle school, I grew up in northern Colorado in a small little town called Hygiene, Colorado, which probably very few people know where that's at, but I attended high school in the big city of Longmont, Colorado, and it was a public high school, and it just so happens that one of the astronauts from our great country came from Longmont. His name is Vance Brand, and so happened that my dad, who's a physician, was taking care of Vance Brand's father, and as a result of that, I had the opportunity to spend the day with Vance Brand one-on-one. He kind of came over to our house. It was this bizarre, surreal moment. But what he brought with him was his story about being an astronaut, and he brought with him this 3-ring binder that had, at that time, obviously declassified information about the space shuttle program and about the Apollo program, and photos and just reports of the early test phases of that. And aside from walking away realizing I just spent the day with an icon of this country, I walked away excited about that, and I wanted to know how I can do that. And so that's what got me interested going into aerospace engineering. I did not come from a private school. I went to public school all the way through until I was decided to go to medical school. I went down to the University of Arizona, worked through and got my aerospace engineering degree, and then spent some time down there doing research in the aerospace labs that are well funded by the federal government and defense. And then got in an opportunity to spend some time at the medical center down there. They, at the time, Arizona had bought the rights to the Jarvik 7 artificial heart. Now that's going to go down in infamy as one of the great experiments. It never really was, but they asked for aerospace engineers to come help the cardiac program try to figure out the problems with that particular instrument. And I volunteered, and what I realized in the process of that is that physics is everywhere. I mean, that's what I've been doing all along, but there's physics in everything. And fast forward, that spun me off into going into medical school, and I was accused of being a traitor from my engineering colleagues because, as Jim Johnson pointed out, engineers are hard to come by. They're hard to come by in general. They've been hard to come by for a while, and you're protective of it. And I was really labeled a traitor, but I ended up going into medicine, and here I am. And I got involved with the curriculum committee at Corpus Christi on the School Advisory Council because what we are trying to develop at Corpus Christi is a school that, although we develop a faith-based education and deliver that, and we feel for our own reasons that is highly important, what we want to, and our goal is to, and all apologies to Dr. Spencer, we're going to be your greatest competitor, because what we want to develop is not just the best Catholic school in Colorado Springs. We want to develop a school that is a beacon of education, whether it be faith-based or not. And in that, we've made a lot of efforts over the last several years to institute changes that mirror what we see in business. We have Peter Spicer on our board, who comes from G.E. Johnson. We have Greg Rodriguez, who's an entrepreneur on his own right, and a lot of people that bring a lot of varied experiences. But one of the things that we started early on talking about is instituting this idea of seeing outcomes measures. In medicine, we call it outcomes measures. And in business, you call it deliverables. But the idea that we have to have some sort of way of measuring our outcomes and how we're doing with kids. In 2011, we changed our math curriculum 100%. We looked at what we were doing, it was like, we're not doing a good enough job with math. So we went out and sought out an innovative math program that individually targets each individual child. So not only are we helping the youngest kid, or the most challenged child, but we're helping the kids that came into school or into that year advance just that amount, because the curriculum is individually targeted. And well, that was great. And then we continued to look, and I always thought that we were going to have to look hard at trying to find innovative and programs that are going to push the envelope. And then Peter emailed me one afternoon and said, "Hey, Jim Johnson just talked to me about this program, this science program, and I'm going to email you this thing, and can you just take a look at it and let me know your thoughts?" And to be honest with you, I didn't tell Peter this at the time, but I got the email and I'm thinking, yeah, right, okay, so somebody's schlepping some curriculum, and I'll look at it, but nothing good ever comes, drops in your lap. I mean, it doesn't. But when I looked at it and I opened it up, it dawned on me that somebody, and a group of somebody's, in my opinion, finally got it. Because I look at life as physics is around us everywhere. Okay, my wife calls me a super nerd. She's like, "How can you be anything but a super nerd if you are an engineer and now you're a surgeon?" And I drive her and my kids crazy, because as we go around, I'm always pointing out where physics is. I mean, the way I look at life is physics is the way science is it describes how we interact with the world around us, but physics is really what drives it and allows everything to happen. Physics is allowing me to stand here and talk to you. Physics is defining how you're hearing my voice, how I'm seeing your faces looking at me. Physics is defining why we get snow, rain, or sunshine. Physics is defining how the kids are allowed to write on their paper, and it's everywhere. And I drive my children nuts. And here we are with a curriculum that was emailed to me from a group of people that must be symbiotic in some way. Because I'm like, this is a group of people that looks at it, because the way that the program is developed is amazing because it takes physics and it takes all of the sciences that are normally taught through middle school, chemistry, biology, anything, earth sciences, and it reduces it to the common core, for lack of a better term, in the fact that everything, in my opinion, can be brought back to physics. So why is that important? Well, it's important because we can then go and talk to our parents at our private school and say, when they're asked, why are we just teaching physics? I'm like, we're not just teaching physics. We're teaching everything, but we're teaching it through the lens of physics. And we're teaching it in such a way that they begin to understand that weather, driving your car, walking up and down stairs, talking to your friends, all of that is based in physics. The other thing that it does, and other people have touched on it well, I cannot emphasize enough the importance of the simple fact that this program teaches the scientific principle, because and everything is based on the scientific principle, because if you base everything in that, it teaches you how to think. People ask me all the time, well, how do you link aerospace engineering with being a physician? Everything that I do every day, especially doing trauma care, my day is never the same. No patient is ever the same. No situation is ever the same. But what engineering does through physics is it teaches you how to think. And that is, in my opinion, the biggest core of what we're missing in our kids these days. We're teaching them how to memorize really well. We're teaching them how to regurgitate information. But we're not teaching them how to think. I've had the opposite experience. Taking board exams for me is torture, because all those things is memorizing and regurgitation. I was never taught to think that way. I was always taught to process. But if you teach this curriculum, as Dr. Spencer mentioned before, if you teach this curriculum, it's gonna generate kids that may not go into physics, they may not go into engineering, they may not go into science or the medical industry, but whatever they choose to go into, they're going to be able to apply what they think to whatever it is they do, whether it's economics or business or anything like that, because you're teaching not only science, you're teaching the core of what it is to think through a process. And so this is much bigger than physics. It's much bigger than science. It really is getting back to teaching our kids the innate ability to think through problems. And that is what this is, more than just beyond just the physics curriculum. So when you're looking at this, look at it through the lens of just teaching a physics curriculum, because you really are teaching math, you're teaching chemistry, biology, all of those things, but you're most importantly getting back into our schools how to teach our kids to think, which is going to pay dividends across the board. So that's the fact. Now, thanks for having me today. It's an honor.